Well, we're going to take a little break from what we were working on, and we rolled in the 16-footer for a reason. I want to show you something which in some of our other boats gets a lot of use, but in the kayaks gets very, very little use. But this boat is a 16-foot two-person kayak, and its configuration for the cockpit is wide open. So it's about 7-8 feet of wide open cockpit, which means it's going to be a little bit flimsy here on the sides if we don't do something to stiffen that up a bit. So we have knees, and these come with patterns in the plans, and all you do is you cut them out just like we did the forms. And we're going to use instant epoxy, and I want to show you how instant epoxy is used. It's really simple. It's a glue. The only difference is you got to work fast because it's going to dry fast. So I'm going to mix up a little bit. We've already got some of these on here, and you can see that they're good and solid. Now, I don't use instant epoxy for structural integrity, but I do use it to attach things so I can then come back and do other things to build it up and make it a little bit stronger. So we're going to go through those steps by putting the knee on, right? So again, we're going to start with the instant epoxy. I'm going to show you how that's mixed and how it works. We're going to attach this, and then we're going to do a fillet right here. And we've already got these fillets done, so we'll show you how those work. And then we're going to, while we've got all this stuff going, you know, I hate to mix epoxy and throw stuff out, so I'm going to take care of the bulkheads at the same time. This has got a front and a rear bulkhead. I'm going to put a little dab of instant epoxy behind it just to hold the bulkheads in place, and then we're going to do a fillet around the bulkheads. And again, you know, the transom knee bulkheads, it's the same process that we're doing. We're putting a fillet, we're going to put a little bit of fiberglass tape on this thing, and that'll make it good and strong, so that when we put our deck back on, we'll have lots of strength and integrity here along the sides, because usually when people get in and out, they're pushing up and down on these sides. All right, so I'm going to hop over to the bench and we're going to mix a little bit of this up. Okay, so when working with this stuff, it's definitely best to have everything ready so that you're not looking around for any stuff. And the way this is basically going to go is the instant epoxy that we use and we ship out to people is a 1-to-1 ratio, right? And these are little, basically medicine cups. And I make little black marks in there to make it easier to see, and I get myself down level so that it's easier to see. And I'm going to go ahead and make this pour. Now, before I do that, I've got my brush ready, and I've got a little stirring stick ready. I'm going to mix the two together. I got about 30 seconds to mix it, and then I've got to get it on this piece of wood, and I've got to get it on, dab it on the back of the bulkhead. So what I'm going to do is mix it up, dab it on the back of the bulkhead, and then go right to this piece of wood. All right, so let's go ahead and do our pour here. Doesn't matter which one you do first. If you make a mistake on the first one, you just have to make a mistake on the second one. So if you pour a little bit over what you wanted, you gotta pour a little bit over what you want on the second pour. This stuff isn't very forgiving when it comes to ratios, so try to get as close as you possibly can. All right. All right, and then mix it really well, mix it fast. And again, you get about 30 seconds of mixing time here. Just a little dab where I can see it, the two will meet. And that will be just enough to hold this in place. So that I can walk away. Now I'm going to go ahead and put it back on that piece. And I am going to fairly liberally place it onto the contacting surfaces, although you don't want it running out. Now usually when I'm doing a process like this, there'll be at least two of us. Somebody else will have something in their hand where they're scraping up any excess. All right, well, this part of the process is pretty darn easy. Now we just put it on and we hold it. And we're going to hold this for about 3 minutes, and then we should be able to let go. It won't slide down on us anymore at that point. Okay, so it's pretty much that simple. The trick is with instant epoxy is don't bite off more than you can chew. The issue is you can only mix so little at one time, so you know, I'm trying not to waste it. You use as much as you can and you try to do as much as you can. But if you're working alone, don't overdo it. You're gonna have to do one at a time, and then and that's all there is to it. So from the time that I mixed the epoxy to the time that I had it on here, I spent less than 30 seconds putting some dabs on that bulkhead, came right back over this, so within a minute of finishing stirring that, I had this thing on the boat. And you can see that I can already let go of it. I'm going to hang on to it for just a couple more minutes, and then it'll be good to go. And then we'll go ahead and do some fillets and show you how all that works. All right, well, there's no particular magic for this fillet versus the ones that we did in the stems. The only difference is, if there is a difference, is you may want to make it just a little bit thicker, because we're going to be going straight up and down and around some corners, but not so thick that you can't spread it out. Again, you're going to want it kind of like a creamy peanut butter kind of thing. Try to be as neat as possible, as always when working with epoxy. Alright, I'm going to let that set a second while we go over here and work on our deck knee. Alright, you don't want to put too much on here because it doesn't take too much. Just enough to up underneath, where it attaches underneath too. And if there's any little gaps here in the front, make sure you fill that. All right, I'm going to put this aside. I'm not going to empty it yet. I'm going to put it aside though in case I need any more of this. I'm going to grab a spoon, start doing my fillet. So for this part of the operation, you just need a regular old picnic spoon, like I have here. And you're going to want to have a paper towel handy. And a little putty knife to get all this excess up. And just run it right around. And take your putty knife, and without hitting the work you just did, okay, go around and pick up the excess. Okay, before we get too far along, there's a couple other special things going on in this type of kayak when it's got the wide open cockpit, right? We have the seats, and normally it's a simple thing. You just mount the back of the seat to a bulkhead, right? Because there's a couple of mounting points to seats. You've got the ones up here on the sides, and we mount those depending on, you can either mount them underneath the shear clamp here, or you can mount them to the knees. If you're going to mount them to the knees, make sure that the knees are firmly attached to the deck and that you've got fiberglass cloth running up, so that you give these plenty of strength. Because remember, when you're pushing back, you're going to be pushing back on the seat this way, so you're going to be pulling. All right. But the other mounting point that we have is down here on the bottom, and it's fully adjustable just by pulling it through these and then adjusting the bottom straps here, but we still need a place to mount them. And again, normally you just mount them right to the back of the bulkhead, and it's a real simple thing. You use pad eyes. Well, we need a place to put the pad eyes, and obviously we're not going to drill holes through the bottom of a boat because that's bad in so many ways. So what we need to do is mount something so that we can mount our pad eyes directly to it. So by looking at the plans, I know that this seat is going to be right about here, and I want to be back. Again, we're fully adjustable here, so we've got a little bit of play, but I want to be back right around 15 or 18 inches. Again, just check the plans and it'll have all the suggestions for that. So I need to take this block of wood and I need to mount it here, and if this was a flat surface, that would be really simple, but it's not flat. It's a little bit rounded. So we got to take a couple of measurements and we got to shape this to what we need it to be. And then we're going to use the same concoction that we just used to put the fillets in here. The only difference is when we put these knees on, we used instant epoxy so that we could hold them for a couple of minutes and then let them go and then do our thing. And remember what I told you, these aren't terribly structural, so I'm not overly concerned about it. But this is, we're going to be tightening those straps up and pulling against it. So I want to do it right. And by doing it right, that means I'm going to use regular epoxy. I'm going to scuff this up a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and bed it and mount it down there and let that dry. And then the fillet will go around that and fiberglass, and that'll be plenty strong. Because remember, we're pushing back against the seat, not pulling forward, so we don't have to be crazy about this thing. So the first thing we need to do is figure out how we're going to get this mounted. So let me just get this seat out of the way. And let's take a closer look at how we do that. We're going to need a compass to make that happen. I've already got one done here. And so the idea is we want to take this, which has a gap down here, and we want to make it so that it's flat, so that when I push on it, it's nice and flat down there. A couple of things we need to do is first find the center of this. So if I put my glasses back on, I take my carpenter square and I can look at this, and it is 8.5 inches wide, so I'm going to go 4 1/4, and I'm going to make a center line. Now that I got my center line and I've already made a mark on the boat where I want it to go, I'm going to put it right there. And if you look closely and we get that camera in for you, you're going to see that there's a gap down there. So what I need to do is scribe that line. So I'm going to take my compass here and I'm going to close it up, because I really don't need much there. And just simply take the compass, run it right along the bottom here. And remember, when you're scribing, the idea is not to rock this back and forth, right? You want to keep it at the same angle all the way up and down. Right. So what that does is it shows me a slight curve on either edge. All right, so from here I would take this over to the sander and just simply sand that curve right in, just following the lines. And if your compass doesn't get close enough, that's fine. You just need to scribe a line and then follow the line. You don't necessarily have to take it to the line. Just kind of follow that curve, right? All right, so I grabbed a small piece of sandpaper and I'm going to put my block in place. Make sure that we're relatively square going across the boat here. And I'm going to mark it off. So I know where I'm going to be putting it down. Now, this epoxy's been on here for a while, at least a week, so it's cured. And when you cure epoxy, there's two kinds of bonds, a mechanical and a chemical. A chemical bonding is pretty much done. I'm not going to get any chemical bonding because what's on here is already cured. So I need to take some sandpaper and scuff it up a bit. Remember to always, when you're making a fillet material or a fairing material, always fully mix the epoxy before you put the additional material in there. So once the additional material is in there, it's a little bit more difficult to get all mixed up together. Okay, well, we're finally getting to the point where we're going to put on these little patches, and I have roughly appropriately cut size patches, about 2.5 inches or so. I've got clear epoxy, I've got gloves on, and I've got a 1-inch brush. And I got the gloves on because this has potential to be a little bit messy. So all we're going to do here is take our brush, and we're going to brush on some clear epoxy. Now, feel free to brush it on the entire knee, because you're going to have to do it anyway. You got to seal that wood up. You don't want any
unsealed wood inside your boat. So I'm just going to go ahead and brush it underneath. And then I'm going to come out just a little bit. And again, it's epoxy over epoxy, so we're not overly concerned. But you do want to pick up any of the drips that are there. Alright, once you got it spread on there pretty liberally, you just take your patch and go ahead and apply it. And take your brush and put enough epoxy on there so that you absolutely saturate the entire piece of cloth.